You are sitting in a conference room, or perhaps you are staring at a grid of faces on Zoom. It is 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. On paper, the agenda is simple: a line on the Q3 deliverables. In reality, you are witnessing a slow-motion car crash. You have a product lead who is aggressively pushing for a feature release because sales has promised it to a client. Across the table, you have the engineering lead, arms crossed, explaining for the third time why the current architecture cannot support that load without a total refactor. Both of them are right. Both of them are speaking English. And yet, neither of them is actually hearing a word the other says. The air in the room is thick with friction. You can feel the heat loss. This isn't a technical problem. The code can be written. This isn't a strategy problem. The market need is clear. This is a translation failure. We often mistake leadership for the ability to make the best decision. But in my 20 years spanning systems architecture and executive strategy, I have found that being right is actually the cheap part. The expensive part, the part that bankrupts teams and stalls careers, is the inability to transmit that rightness to people who operate on a different logic setting. We call this soft skills, a term I detest because it implies they are optional or flimsy. Let's call it what it is: soft power. It is the ability to navigate the messy, redundant, illogical operating system known as human beings. When you ignore this layer, you get friction. You get silence where there should be feedback. You get malicious compliance. You get a team that is technically brilliant but functionally paralyzed. We need to reframe how we look at emotions in a technical environment. If you are an engineer or you think like one, you might view emotions as noise, inefficiencies that muddy the data. I want you to flip that. Think of emotional intelligence not as being nice, but as understanding the API documentation of the person across from you. Every human being you work with has a specific set of inputs that yield predictable outputs. If you send a logic packet to a receiver that is currently listening for safety or validation, the request times out. You get a 404 error in the form of a defensive email or a passive-aggressive Slack message. Soft power is the technical capability to diagnose the receiver's state before you transmit your data. It is the recognition that human logic does not follow binary rules. A person can believe that a project is necessary and still fight against it because they fear it threatens their team's stability. That is not irrational. That is a conflicting variable. If you try to bulldoze that fear with more charts and more data, you are essentially shouting at a locked door. The compass here is simple: connection before content. You must establish a secure handshake protocol, trust, before you can transfer the heavy data of critique or redirection. If you skip the handshake, the data is lost. Before we dissect exactly how to fix that broken meeting I mentioned, I want to invite you to stop navigating this terrain alone. Leadership can be an isolating altitude. You see the friction, but you don't always have the peers to discuss the architecture of the fix. That is why we built the Pathfinder Collective. It's a room of women who are done with the buzzwords and are looking for the blueprints. If you want to move from managing tasks to architecting outcomes, come find us. The link is in the show notes. Now, let's go back to that conference room. Let's look at a specific, concrete example of where this breaks down. I want you to picture David, a senior staff engineer. David cares deeply about code quality. He sees technical debt as a literal fire in the building. Then there is Sarah, the product director. Sarah is fielding calls from angry customers who are churning because feature X is missing. They are in a sprint planning meeting. Sarah says, "We just need this one button added by Friday." David hears, "I don't respect your codebase, and I want you to inject a hack that will wake you up at 3 a.m. on Saturday." David says, "We can't do that until we refactor the user table." Sarah hears, I don't care about the business or our revenue goals. The friction here is that they are arguing about two different currencies. Sarah is trading in speed and revenue. David is trading in stability and excellence. The mistake they are both making is that they are trying to convert the other person to their currency using brute force. Sarah speaks louder about the client. David speaks more technically about the database. They are deadlocked. I watched a version of this play out last year at a Series B startup. The meeting ended with David shutting down completely, saying, "Fine, whatever you want," and Sarah leaving feeling like she had to drag the team across the finish line. The result? The feature shipped, the database broke 2 days later, and David started replying to recruiter emails. That is the cost of low soft power. It's not just an awkward meeting, it's attrition. It's system failure. So, how do you intervene? If you are the leader in that room, or even just a peer observing the crash, you need a protocol. I use a drill called Listen, Reflect, Pivot. It is designed to lower the temperature and switch the processing mode from defense to collaboration. Step 1. Listen. This sounds passive, but it is highly active. You are not listening for the pause so you can speak. You are listening for the core fear. When David talks about technical debt, his core fear is catastrophic failure and loss of professional pride. When Sarah talks about the client, her core fear is irrelevance and business failure. Step 2. Reflect. This is where you prove you downloaded the file. You do not offer a solution yet, you simply mirror back the reality. You say to David, "I want to pause." David, what I'm hearing is that if we push this update without the refactor, we are introducing a risk level that you don't feel is responsible. Is that accurate? You wait for the yes. That yes is the biochemical signal that lowers his adrenaline. You have validated his logic. Then you turn to Sarah. Sarah, I hear that if we don't show movement on this by Friday, we risk losing a key account, which destabilizes us all. Is that right? She says yes. Step 3. Pivot. Now that you have established two valid truths, you pivot to the shared problem. You say, okay, we have two truths. We cannot break the system, and we cannot ignore the client. We are not choosing one. We need a third path. David, what is the smallest version of this feature that is safe to ship? Sarah, if we can give you 20% of the functionality now and the rest after the refactor, does that buy you enough time with the client? You have moved them from me versus you to us versus the problem. You didn't use jargon. You didn't use authority. You used soft power to align the architecture of their incentives. I want to zoom out for a moment and look at why this skill set is becoming the most valuable asset in the modern economy. We are rapidly entering an era where artificial intelligence can handle the hard logic. AI can write the code. AI can optimize the supply chain. AI can generate the marketing copy. If your value proposition is solely that you are a fast processor of information, you are in trouble. You are competing with a machine that costs pennies to run and never sleeps. But here's what AI cannot do. AI cannot walk into a room where trust has been broken and rebuild it. AI cannot look at a tired team member and discern whether they need a challenge or a break. AI cannot navigate the nuance of a founder's ego or a client's unstated anxiety. These are human logic problems. In a world awash with cheap intelligence, the ability to manage human friction is the scarcest resource. This is why I call EQ a technical multiplier. If you have a team of 10 brilliant engineers who cannot communicate, you have zero output. If you have one leader who can align their vectors, you have exponential output. Soft power is the infrastructure that allows intelligence to travel. I want to ground this in one final reality: your home life. We often bifurcate our skills: CEO at work, exhausted parent at home. But the listen, reflect, pivot drill is just as effective with a toddler or a teenager as it is with a VP of engineering. When my daughter refuses to put on her shoes and we are running late, my instinct is hard logic. We are late. Put them on. The result is a meltdown. Friction increases. Speed decreases. If I switch to soft power, I pause. I listen. She is frustrated because she can't do the Velcro. I reflect. You are angry because the shoes are fighting you. She stops crying. She says yes. I pivot. I will do the left one, you do the right one. We are out the door in 2 minutes. The context changes, but the mechanism is identical. You are managing a human operating system. Practice this at home where the stakes are emotional, and it will become muscle memory when the stakes are financial. This week, I want you to run the diagnostic. Look at your calendar. Identify the one meeting that you are dreading, the one where you know the friction is high. Do not go into that meeting with more data. Go in with the listen, reflect, pivot script. Listen for the fear behind the argument. Reflect it back until you get a yes. Pivot to a shared solution. I want to know how it goes. Which coordinate of this map resonated most with you? Was it the concept of EQ as API design? Or was it the specific script for the standoff? Let me know. We are building this map together, and your data points help us all navigate. Until next time, keep your logic sharp, but keep your power soft.